Welcome to Raging Bullets, a DC Comics fan podcast, episode 402. Welcome to Raging Bullets. I'm Sean Whalen, drnorge, and I'm joined as always by my co-host Jim, the sensei of the whatnot Segulent, and the Duke of You-Know. On this episode, it's the second part of our episode 400 anniversary celebration. We are going to be talking with friend of the show, Art Lyon, about Batman and Robin. When we recorded this originally, we got to the end, you'll hear it on this episode, we thought we were going to release this as one episode. As we discussed it after we got done recording, we realized that when we do all three of these movies, it would be much better for the listening audience if they were broken down into three separate episodes. It just makes sense that way. You can watch, if you feel like it, you can listen to this in your car. If you feel like turning on the film, like Art and I were doing as we were watching it, you can have this running alongside it. So there's a lot of different ways you could probably listen to enjoy this episode. I do want to quickly apologize. I know this episode's a little bit delayed. I started a new job, and one of the things in order to make sure that the podcast keeps going and everything, I needed to get everything at my new job under wraps before I could work on releasing this episode. And I got some great emails and messages from friends of the show, of the podcast, who were just really supportive of that. So I want to apologize to everybody for the slight delay. Basically, this episode is kicking us back into normal gear again, so the show will be back up and running. We will have 4 episodes for August. That's still going to go. It's just we had a little bit of a gap between the first and second August episode leading to this third one now. So thank you very much for your patience and support of the show as always, and let's get right into the podcast. We are proud members of the Comics Podcast Network, the League of Comic Book Podcasts, and the DCinfinite.com podcast partnership. Sponsoring this episode is DCBService.com and InStockTrades.com. Over at DCBService.com, I'm a big fan of statues, and actually I always go to DCBService.com, click on the statues button, and take a look at what DC Direct is offering. 2 of them I'm eyeing right now is the Batman Black and White statue by Francis Manapul. I really enjoyed his artwork in the Flash series, really enjoyed what the team's been doing with Batman, so I want this one as a part of my collection. I'm also looking at, I'm a big Hawkman fan of the show, Hawkgirl, the whole Hawk family. They've got the DC Comics Bombshells Hawkgirl statue, but they have a whole bunch of them in that selection every month. I just wanted to point that out because we talk a lot of times about the comics that they offer at DCBService.com on the show. They offer a full range of comics and toys and collectibles that you can pre-order. It's a great way to lock in those pre-orders at a price that you're not going to be paying if you go to eBay a premium later on because you missed it. So it's a cool way to get your collection, not just your comics, of all the other items too. And I want to thank DCBService.com for continuing to support our show. Over at InStockTrades.com. I'm a big fan of American Vampire. They've got an American Vampire sale going on right now. It's volumes 1 through 5 are 45% off each. So you haven't been reading this series, it's a great way to get it at a discount. So go on over to InStockTrades.com and check out American Vampire. Remember, orders of $50 or more give you free shipping. James, what kind of a podcast are we?
Raging Bullets, episode 400. Raging Bullets. That's right, volunteers. For this special episode of Raging Bullets, we will be discussing the cinema masterpieces Superman 4, Quest for Peace, and Batman and Robin. Naturally, we wouldn't want to ruin your experience with these critically acclaimed works of art. So if you haven't watched the movies, please do so before watching our show. This way we can all enjoy the show.
Guys, we're on our second film, and director Joel Schumacher was kind enough, and Akiva Goldsman on the script were kind enough to give us Batman and Robin.
It's the gift that keeps on giving.
What is your, if I had to ask you just kind of a general feeling on the film, where you're just kind of, you got a couple sentences just to relay to somebody your feelings on Batman and Robin. Art, let's start with you. Where do you stand on this film?
Oddly enough, of the 3 movies that we watched, I think in a lot of ways this is the most watchable because it has the most even tone throughout the movie. I mean, it's completely bonkers, but it is consistently bonkers. It really is like I was really struck watching it again now with the perspective that we have now. It really is the Adam West Batman show from the 60s glammed up, basically. Not done as well because it's approached in a different way. It's really campy. It even goes so far as to have the weird camera angle and all that stuff. It really is, in a way, trying, I guess, to be an homage to that. I realized as watching it on the DVD, there is a commentary by Joel Schumacher. I really want to take the time and listen to it because I really want to hear what he has to say.
I didn't realize that was the case, and I definitely want to hear that as well. Jim, what was your impression of it?
The 60s comment is absolutely what I was thinking. And unlike you, I don't have really fond memories of that 60s. So when this was first out in the theaters, I remember watching it going, what the hell was that? What was that? What? What? And because, for any issues and faults that Michael Keaton may have had, as Batman, that was a really cool, dark, gritty Batman. And just as the movie series went on, it got more and more and more campy. And I'm not a huge fan of camp. And this was the final straw of camp. And I just, there's so many sequences in here that I was like, what? No. And it just, this was, for me, of the three movies, this was the hardest one to watch.
Wow.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah, I'm not in that place. I'm probably a little closer in my leanings to Art. Basically, my feeling is this. There was a lot of potential here, and there's a part of me that's like, how could they mess that up so bad? The problem here is I really liked half the content. And the other half was a mess because the film had an identity crisis. It couldn't decide if he wanted to be the Tim Burton films or if it wanted to be the 66 movie. I agree with Art's connection to the 66 series, and I love that. I'm a big fan of the camp. The problem is they were trying to go the campy movie route, but then they're deadly serious in other areas. The 60s series, if you really watched it closely, and I think Art and I connect on this one, they had some really good stories there. And there were a lot of times where those stories were serious in their tone, but they had a really natural flow into the camp. It was unapologetic. Like, they knew what they were doing. They really had a theme, and it was built to throughout the entire show to the point where it wasn't jarring. In this, the problem is when they do the camp, it's jarring. It goes from, like, one sequence to the other. I actually found myself liking Clooney and O'Donnell a great deal, with a few minor exceptions, but there was so many other things that like kept ruining sequences that I was enjoying because of this jarring part. Go ahead, Art.
It's inconsistent is one of the problems. The TV series, not that we should compare it maybe too much to the TV series, but the TV series was consistent, even if, like you were talking about, when it has, those serious moments, like where at the end of an episode, Batman has like a final conversation, with Catwoman about how things could be different and blah, blah, blah. It was still played not in like a mock way, but also not, completely serious because of how Adam West would deliver those lines with almost too much earnestness, Everybody was on the same page. And in this movie, there's not as much consistency of tone as in the 60s series. I do
fall in the camp of Art, and it's there's nothing wrong with your comment, Jim. This is probably out of the three films the most rewatchable for me as well, because there was the parts that I liked in it, I was like, wow, that's brilliant. The parts that I disliked, I'm like, what on earth were you thinking? Actually going back to the one we just did, there are parts in here that I hate way more than Nuclear Man. and really? The first name that comes to mind, let's just go to it, Bane. What on earth were they? I would take out Bane and put in Nuclear Man. And I hate Nuclear Man.
Yeah, see, it's a funny thing with this movie. I actually liked, okay, I kind of liked George Clooney's Batman, but it was all the people around him that angered and pained me, and I was like, no, oh, and Bane is one of them. Some of the stuff that Arnold did, even Chris O'Donnell, some of his stuff, it was just like I was like, I'm just watching this movie, and I remember in the movie theater being physically in pain and just saying, what the heck did they do to Batman? What did they do to, especially the Bane? Bane really just it so angered me, and so just it was just beyond nauseous.
Let me stop you there, because I think this is a film we need to start dissecting, because I think there's going to be every comment that we all want to make is going to come out as we start this.
Yes,
let's just start right. The opening of the film opens up with I think a brilliant part. The opening sequence with the Batman and Robin symbol, I thought that was the production values, the quality of that, I thought was really, really great. And it sounds like you want to, Art, go ahead. It sounds like you want to say something right there.
I was just going to agree. Production values on this movie are really good. I mean, there's a lot of instances of props and objects seeming really flimsy, but in a way, I think that contributes to the cornball enjoyment I get out of this movie. Is that, like early on when Batman and Robin attack Mr. Freeze, it's like Robin comes crashing through this wall, which I guess is made of plastic, I guess, because he comes right through it. I'm like, what is that wall made out of? But this is a movie that lets you know immediately what kind of movie it's going to be. It's going to be completely bonkers. It opens with these really fetishy close-ups as they're getting dressed, right? And complete with close-ups of their armored butts. Mm-hmm. And then immediately switches to this establishing shot of them in front of the Batmobile and the lights behind them, and it's really dramatic. And then it goes into this banter, right? And then you get this little serious bit with Alfred, and then you're into Mr. Freeze, and we discover that Batman and Robin have ice skates in their boots. You know what you're in for at this point, right? Pretty much know.
Here's where trouble happened for me. I love Batman. The Batarang, the Batcopter, Batmite, the Batcycle, Batboats, the Bat-Tusi. I have firmly decided that I don't need Batbutt in my movies. When that scene,
bat nipples, you didn't need them.
The nipples part, honestly, I get why people crack on that, and I agree with it to a certain extent. For me, it was like the second they did that shot, I'm like, woof. But then here's where they go with it, and this is where I firmly connect with Art on his statement about production values. After you get to that, you get that establishing shot of the two of them by the Batmobile, you start getting into this, like, I thought the Batcave looked spectacular. The Batmobile, I thought, like, to me, at the time, it was a cool-looking Batmobile, and Michael, is it Gow, who plays Alfred? I'm probably butchering his name, but...
I think it's Go.
Is it Go?
I think.
Okay.
I think so.
And that's cool. I want to, and one of the reasons why I was even asking the pronunciation of his name is, if there's one consistency in this film, he does not have a bad moment. He is incredible. There were so many times where he pulled me back into the movie. The establishment at the beginning that there's something wrong with Alfred. Jim, your stuff you were talking about where you didn't like Chris O'Donnell, I kind of get where you're going with that, because he was portraying a certain stage in the life of Robin, and I grew up like reading parts with the teenage Robin where he and Batman were having the discord like this. I'm talking about the Dick Grayson Robin. I actually quite liked that this film explored some of that. So I didn't have a problem with it, but I get why you probably were getting rubbed the wrong way by him. What worked with that with me, it led to the Alfred being the buffer between the two of them. And if the end game didn't play out the way that it did with the two of them with their relationship, I'd probably be exactly where you are. It was the character arc between the two of them leading to a growth for both of them that, for me, made that sequence work. And I actually find in this film there are inherent flaws in the movie. One of them is Arnold. The other one is Bane. But the thing that I really found that I liked was I really liked Clooney. I really liked O'Donnell, and I liked how the butler brought them together.
I would make the argument that if the history of Batman movies has shown us anything, it's that anyone can play Batman. If you look at all the actors who have, it's the real key. The real question becomes, what do you do with Bruce Wayne as an actor? Anyone, can be in that suit and play Batman. They had Michael Keaton, they had Val Kilmer, George Clooney, Christian Bale. Anyone can wear that suit and be Batman, basically. The question becomes what you do with Bruce Wayne. And George Clooney's Bruce Wayne is kind of laid back. I kind of like him.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I was comfortable with Clooney in the cowl and Clooney as Bruce Wayne. And visually, there was some cool stuff that they did. Some of the fight choreography, there was some nice stuff there. And some of this, usages of models and just general scenery. There was some beautiful stuff they did. But there was so many puns and ridiculous one-liners thrown in that those were the stuff that angered me and annoyed me. And that was this problem I had with O'Donnell. It wasn't so much him being a whiny, Robin and being the rebellious teenager. I liked the Nightwing stuff that he was doing and, just the growth of him and that family concept of Bruce, Alfred, and Dick just coming together. But he threw out some puns, he threw out some one-liners, and there was some stuff that that was the thing that kept throwing me off with him, especially with Arnold. His puns and, those were the painful stuff for me and Arnold.
See, I was separating Arnold from O'Donnell, and I agree with you. The film had way too many puns. I actually quite liked the buddy cop relationship between Batman and Robin. Mm-hmm. In the sense that there were puns going on between the two of them, but it wasn't always puns. Arnold, every time he was on the screen. I'm an Arnold fan. I love Commando, Predator, Kindergarten Cop, Terminator 1 and 2, Running Man, Total Recall. What was he thinking here? And honestly, that's not fair on him. It was obviously scripting as well. But at some point in time, don't you as an actor go, I'm Arnold Schwarzenegger. The Iceman cometh. Mercy, I'm afraid my condition has left me cold. I mean, it was nonstop pun after pun. And the problem was, see, for me, and Jim, we might be in a different place on this one, I thought there was great Batman and Robin sequences that were happening, not completely unflawed because we'll get into the sky surfing, but because we got to talk about that nonsense. But there were sequences where there was great character moments, I thought, between Batman and Robin that were drastically ruined by the script's need to have Mr. Freeze throw out constant puns. The best Arnold was the Arnold that hadn't become Mr. Freeze yet, because I liked Victor Freeze, the scientist.
Arnold's best scenes are the ones where the quiet moments where, he's like looking at the little statuette of his wife and stuff. But like those scenes work. Those scenes work as scenes, and you can kind of see him. He's actually doing a pretty good job in terms of what he does with those scenes. But it's almost like you have these bad lines, and then Arnold doesn't really know how to deliver them with any nuance. He just kind of does them, because it's not really his forte. I mean, that's not his thing. Nuanced humor isn't really what you hire him for. And yet he's got all these, super cornball lines, and he just, bats them out.
Yeah. You're not sending me to the cooler. Kill the dinosaurs, the Ice Age.
Wait. I thought he was a scientist. Yeah, I don't think it was the Ice Age that killed the dinosaurs.
Yeah.
Well, it froze his brain.
Right. So, okay. Yeah. Good point.
But this is where I think the movie also falls into identity crisis, because when you start having the fight scene, when they show up and start fighting Freeze, I liked the build up to that. The conversation with Commissioner Gordon I thought was great.
Right.
There are some great detective moments with Batman in this, like when he was investigating Freeze. We'll talk about it a little later, but that moment leading up to it was great. Then they start fighting Freeze, and things start getting broken because out of nowhere, they borrowed sound effects from the Flintstones. And it's like, what are you doing here? You've got serious tones. Like, we came from this serious moment where Alfred's clutching himself.
And dying.
And I'm, like, thinking about that and wondering what's going on with Alfred. Then you go to that.
And then you start in with the bat skates and the hockey sticks. And
Now, that was the thing one of the things that annoyed me. This is the first dealing with Freeze. As they're driving there, they're being told about this guy Freeze. Why do they have blades in their boots?
Because this movie is totally bonkers.
Forget blades in the boots. Why did they forget that they have capes? And here's the reason why I'm saying that. We go through this whole sequence with Arnold, right, where they're having that fight. They go up in the rocket, and we can jump back to any of the fight that you guys want to, but I've got to get this part out because it bugs me. Batman gets captured by Freeze. I actually quite like Clooney's sequences. If Arnold kept his mouth shut during that part, it actually would have gone quite well, because I liked the way that he used the freeze gun to capture Batman. It made sense. And, Robin being on the outside, being the partner, kind of using bat tools to clutch on the outside, that wasn't too far of a stretch. He gets inside. The banter between the two of them I quite liked. I'm glad that we didn't keep going back to Chicks Dig the Car. That was the one line from O'Donnell that sticks out for me and kind of goes, whoa, we're kind of stretching it a bit. But I didn't mind the Chris O'Donnell puns about rescuing him and stuff like that. I thought that stuff was great. They do the bat bomb. They release the doors and start sky surfing.
Yep.
Now, as from our previous conversation I've evidenced, I have a wide span that I will stretch when it comes to unbelievable physics. They had capes. You could have played off of the capes somehow becoming rigid, turning into wings, something like that.
Anything like that.
Anything like that. They were able to manipulate the air using doors as surfboards.
Using steel doors. Yeah.
How do they keep their feet on the doors? I don't know what's going on.
I mean, just that whole collapsing.
Maybe they have bat magnets in their shoes as well as ice skates.
Yeah.
It was the craziest. Like, I'm like, woof. This is like too. I obviously have evidence that I got a wide stretch. That was too much for me. I'm like, oh man, and I actually liked the acting of the two throughout it. It was the more of the situations that they were thrown into that was like awful.
What's weird is I cannot remember like what my reaction was to this movie when it came out and when I saw it in the theater. Although I do remember at the moment where the bat skates come out, I remember going, "Oh, okay, I see where we're going." And after that, I kind of was able to absorb it despite all the cringe-worthy stuff. Watching it now, because like I was talking about earlier, when we began, I've been enjoying the past year or so. I've been enjoying like a lot of B-movie, kind of bad but good. I'm kind of into cornball stuff, and so this movie doesn't bother me much. Primarily because, like I said, it establishes pretty early it's going to be over the top and ridiculous. And granted, have this weird unevenness in tone, because of these little snippets of dramatic moments. But in terms of all the glam and the neon and the ridiculous stuff, I'm not bothered by it.
See, in the Freeze fight, Nightwing did have some cool moments, some cool fight sequences, and I agree with you. I like where he uses the clamps and to ride the outside of the rocket. But the line, "It's the hockey team from hell," that annoyed me because, and for me, that's a personal thing. Anytime anybody does blank from hell when they're, I don't like that line. I don't like that usage of dialogue. So as soon as he says that took me out of it. But then they got some cool fight sequences. I'm like, okay. But then we get in the rocket where Freeze just freezes his hands. Why didn't he encase him in a block of solid ice?
Because he was gloating.
Right. He has to gloat.
This is the first meeting of Freeze and Batman. It's not like this is a longtime villain of Freeze. He doesn't have multiple battles where he can gloat saying, "Aha, I finally got you this time." This is their very first meeting. If it's my first meeting with somebody, I'm going to put him down. I'm going to put him down.
Hold on. Freeze's first meeting with everybody is clearly filled with gloating. Are you not watching the same movie that we are?
I have not caught on to this yet.
You're trying to give this guy logic that's clearly not there. And wait, I'm not going against you on this. Yeah. He's broken. I mean, there is no redeeming Mr. Freeze in this one, other than the fact that when he's not Mr. Freeze. And like Art said, the few sequences where you see him like reflecting, because I agree with Art, the sequence where he crafts out of ice Nora, puts her on that clock and makes his own kind of music box thing, I thought that was very endearing, because he wasn't talking.
Right. He's not talking. He's not talking and throwing out awful one-liners and puns. He has a moment.
Yeah, that stuff was great. I really liked like the moments relating to Nora in this. I thought were really awesome, and it's so sad that when he was being the villain, that they couldn't have somehow made him more compelling, because it was this problem they fell into with the Val Kilmer movie as well. I thought Val Kilmer was great as Bruce Wayne and Batman. I thought he did a terrific job there, and I liked the whole Chase Meridian stuff. That was all cool. But you had in that movie Tommy Lee Jones and Jim Carrey as these over-the-top cartoony villains that took away from the serious drama that was being developed. That movie, I think, also suffered from the same identity crisis, that it didn't know if it wanted to be the campy movies or the Tim Burton movies.
It's interesting. You can see this progression from the first Tim Burton movie into this movie. There's a steady progression from that movie to, the ridiculous bat glam of this movie. Bat glam, bat glam, bat glam. Even in that first movie, in a lot of ways, it's a really fetishy movie already, and Tim Burton kind of sowed the seeds that this movie's reaping, kind of just escalates it all into a weird direction.
You think about the first movie, how over the top, Jack Nicholson played the Joker. And, but it fit the Joker because the Joker is that crazy villain, and it was but you had the dark, brooding Batman to offset it, and everything was going good. And then the next movie, like, hey, let's make Danny DeVito over the top, Penguin. Hey,
except,
I'm gonna Lee Jones and
hold on a second. Riddler. Hold on, I'm going to time you out there. Because this is actually, I've heard that criticism of Danny DeVito's one before. Here's a distinct difference between DeVito's Penguin. It was over the top, and I agree with you on that part. But where there's a line, it was creepy.
Yes.
That was a very creepy, scary, gross,
disgusting.
If you take a look at what happens with Tommy Lee and the Riddler, and this is a path you're heading down, I actually agree with this path, but I've got to put a break in there, because if you put the Riddler, Tommy Lee Jones' Two-Face, Bane, Mr. Freeze in a row and set the Penguin in with them, you're going to start singing, "One of these is not like the others. One of these does not belong."
I will agree with you that he was. I'm not putting him on the same camp level. I'm saying he was the beginning of the camp. Now, the Penguin itself isn't a campy. Yeah, I agree with you. He was creepy, and he was, okay, but they did take it. That was the beginning of it. I think that was the initial sign of it, where they're like, hey, this one this way, let's turn it up a notch and let's see how that goes. Let's turn it up a notch again. And that's, I think, what happened. Instead of saying a dark, brooding, nasty villain, they turned it, and because they saw DeVito was a little bit different. Let's make it a little bit more. Let's make it a little bit more.
It's interesting. It's like they lose the sensibilities or the nuance of those first two movies in the second two movies. In the first movie, Jack Nicholson's Joker is over the top, but at the same time, he's also genuinely scary at times. I mean, like really creepy, scary. Like, this is a crazy man, right? And in the second movie, pretty much the same is true with Danny DeVito's Penguin. He doesn't have the campiness, but he does have an army of clowns. Okay, let's remember that. He has an army of clowns that Batman has to dispatch. And then in the third one, Tommy Lee Jones is essentially playing Two-Face as if Cesar Romero playing the Joker. There's really nothing about his performance as Two-Face that you couldn't use if he were playing the Joker instead. It's really campy. The Riddler is completely campy. And I think that the second two movies lose the nuance of the villains.
Agree completely.
Yeah.
They really turn it the wrong way for me.
You can argue right or wrong. It is a specific direction that they steered these last two movies in, and it's not your Chris Nolan Batman, that's for sure.
Thank God.
Yeah, I'm not sure how you could make this movie more glam without. I mean, if you take it any more glam, you essentially become like the Rocky Horror Picture Show, right? I mean, you can't really go much farther in this direction. I think that there's a reason, that they didn't make a movie after this, because where do you go?
Well, it really was also because it was commercially, compared to the other films, it didn't do well. And Clooney, because of the fact that it was so bashed, said he would not come back. Yeah,
I think I've read a couple places that he blames himself for it,
and
which I think is completely unfair. I think
so too. I actually think he is branded as the failure of this film way too much.
No,
because I thought he was one of the saving graces of this film for me.
He has like I was saying before, as Batman, I think he's just fine. But as Bruce Wayne, he has this real suave quality, which reminds me of the '70s Batman, kind of in the comics where he had penthouse, and he seems he has to some degree. This is what George Clooney brings to a lot of things, is that he has this kind of easy charm to him, and so in the Bruce Wayne stuff, he's really likable, I think.
Yeah.
And you can see why Julie Madison would be attracted to him.
Right.
I liked how Gossip Gertie, who I wasn't a fan of Gossip Gertie, but I did like how it was playing into how much more gossip was becoming a part of our society at the time. And she was saying, "My good friend, Bruce Wayne," kind of implying that there was more there, even though it was really apparent by the way she was saying it that she says that with any form of celebrity that she's around. That I thought was well handled. But when Bruce was on the mic, he was always charming. And you could see how that persona, for people who don't, like, why would a woman flock to him? Well, money's one thing. But also, publicly, when you see this guy, there's a charm. I mean, and he lays it on, but it's also a quiet, reserved charm. Like, he wasn't over the top. He didn't play it over the top. I thought Clooney did a brilliant job as Bruce Wayne. It wasn't overstated. Didn't try to make him more than he actually is. He tried to play Bruce Wayne the way that he should play Bruce Wayne.
Oh, yeah. I digged George Clooney as Bruce, and I digged him as Batman. I've always disliked criticism against him, and blame for him on the failure of the movie, because it's not on him.
No, it's not. Gossip Gertie. Reminds me of one more. I was really struck by this. The moment where they have the auction or whatever with the diamond, right?
Yeah.
And there's Batman and Robin, and they're standing around in costume in front of all of these people. And I'm like, this really is the 60s Batman show. They're just standing around. I'm Batman. Hey, hi.
Hey, how you doing? Yeah.
Hey, how you doing?
I will say
like
that
it's a normal thing.
That was a part, and I'm glad you're bringing that up, because that was a part where I was kind of like, I'm torn on this, because I grew up reading Batman in the 70s very heavily. And that was a Batman that was more in the public eye. I didn't have too much of a problem with the charity auction because of that, other than I am a fan of kind of the Batman now that wouldn't do that, but I didn't have an issue with it because they didn't, like, until he was hit by Ivy's charms, the whatever that toxin was that she was laying on everybody. He was fine until then. Then when that hit, that's when he and Dick Grayson were pulled in the same way. And I liked that Ivy even noticed that they resisted. Like, it wasn't enough to fully turn them the way that she wanted them to. Mm-hmm. So that part I thought was cool. I was glad to see that that was acknowledged. So I didn't really have a huge problem with that whole sequence. I'm not a fan of that anymore, just because I've grown accustomed to the more, Batman stays in the shadows and that type of thing. Right. But I didn't really have a huge problem with that, because again, Clooney and O'Donnell publicly, didn't go crazy outside of their roles that they played when they were being Batman and Robin in the fights. It was the same kind of character. So that part was, I thought, fine.
Only thing I'm going to say on that Bat auction is holy product placement, Batman. With the Bat credit card. Never leave home without it.
Right.
Oh, that was my line. I actually, and I'll agree with you 100% on that one. Because they took a sequence that I actually didn't have a problem with because of the fact that they were reacting to being under the spell of Ivy. So once that was put on the table, I was fine with that. The fact that he carries that, I do have a problem with.
Yes.
And you're actually right to call that one out because that was something I had in my notes as being an issue. I'm like, wow, this sequence was going so well, and then that happened, and then Freeze showed up, and that's where this has just gone horribly wrong. Can we actually step back a little bit?
Let's jump back to
because the sky surfing thing ends.
Sky surfing.
Yeah, and I liked that their capes played into their landing, to a certain extent, even though none of that should have worked without their arms being ripped off. But it led to that debate with Batman and Freeze over, saving the boy versus catching the villain. I really liked that sequence until he freezes the wall, wipes it, and waves. I'm like, can you not desecrate every scene? I'm like, this was working for me. It was so good. You had this powerful debate there. Then you had to go and do that. Like, why? Why are you in a different movie?
At any moment, this is a movie you can count that at any moment you're enjoying, it will very soon go south.
And even his line leading up to that, I didn't have an issue with it, as much as anything he said in the past, where it's like, it's your emotions that make you weak. That's why the day is mine. I didn't have a big problem with that one, but then, as you said, the wiping and waving, bye. And the other thing that did annoy me is he freezes Robin, but the diamond doesn't freeze at all. If he's hitting them all, it all should be one giant block of ice. No pun intended.
He left, Jim. He left.
Thereby making Sean happy.
Yeah, that's me not arguing with you because I get your point and it's well met. But at that point, I was like, he left, and then Batman had the chance. Like, nobody at that moment was like sitting here saying like we should reshoot that scene and try to maybe add some more freezing and stuff like that, so that way that gets frozen. No, they were kind of like, let's let him go.
Let him go.
Clooney and O'Donnell will probably whisper each other, let him go, and then we'll have this cool sequence where I unfreeze you for like a few moments. Let the fans remember that this is a Batman and Robin movie. Like, I actually quite liked the way that he rescued Robin. I thought that was really cool. Like, his motivation was, I got to let the villain get away so I can save Robin. Cool. That's Batman. That's what he would do. I liked how he did it. We've got seconds. My only option here is to heat up the water and thaw him slowly in time before the 11 minutes is up, and that established this whole 11 minutes thing, which I thought that was a pretty cool tool. I liked that whole physics aside, whatever, that it established what the rules were in this movie world.
Yeah, I know what we need now, Sean. We need a movie that's Mr. Freeze, Arnold Schwarzenegger as Mr. Freeze versus Nuclear Man.
I don't know who I'd want with Bane being the prize at the end. They get to have him at the end. Oh,
man.
This takes us to, though, we get an introduction to Jason Woodrue and Pamela Isley.
I completely, until I watched this again recently for this show, I had forgotten, that Bane was even in this movie and that Jason Woodrue is in this movie.
Yeah, John Glover, it's...
Right, yeah, John Glover.
I thought he was great as Woodrue because it was a small part. I had no issue with what he was doing, and I was glad that they kind of did a nod to Jason Woodrue because they didn't destroy him like they did Bane. I wish I could forget Bane was in this.
Well, he doesn't have a lot of screen time, and I think that the actor understands what kind of movie he was in. He cornballs it up just enough without going over the top. I think that he strikes a nice balance.
Amen. I thought balance is a really strong word because I think the performances I enjoyed in this had the balance. They may have hit a line or two too many, which I was okay with. You can handle an extra line. With Chris O'Donnell, with me, it was the chicks dig the car. I was like, no, you didn't need to do that. That line. And
though, that line is a callback to the previous movie.
Right. And it didn't work there either. You're right, though. I'm glad you point. You know what? I forgot about that until you said it, but it is also a line that didn't work for me in that film.
Yeah.
What do you guys think about? And I think this is really something that we'll go around to. Art, I'll go to you first. Pamela Isley. What did you think of Uma Thurman's portrayal? Like it? Didn't like it? Fall somewhere in the middle?
I don't like it. I'm kind of torn. If I had to decide who I want in this movie, Uma Thurman as Ivy or Arnold Schwarzenegger as Mr. Freeze, it would be a tough call. Might be easier for you, Sean. Just based on what you've had to say so far about Mr. Freeze. But her performance has almost no nuance to it. I think that she's just vamping it up, and that's about it. I don't think that she's bad. I don't think that she's a bad actress. I just think that there's not much going on with that character. There's no tragedy in her background. There's not many notes there that she has to hit. I think that she's kind of dull. Mr. Freeze at least has this like a tragic background thing, and he has like a few moments where you feel really sorry for him, and then of course he flips and flops over and does all the bad puns and the one-liners. But I think she's fine. I think that it gets tired. I think
when they were casting and getting ready and doing all the readings and whatnot, preparing for this, they probably took Uma Thurman aside and said, "Okay, here's what I want you to do. Take every single thing you know about acting, throw it out the window, and forget it. Because you're not going to be doing any real acting." Because she's an amazing actor. She is very talented, and she's been in a lot of movies. I'm like, man, that's really cool. And you see just emotional spectrums and just beautiful portrayals. And then we get this. And I'm just like, and I can't even just blame it on bad dialogue, because it's like they told her, go over the top. It's that the 66 version. They're saying, hey, we want this super campy. And she gave them super campy. And she did. And I wanted to say, why? Why?
let me tell you mine, and then I got another.
To answer your question before, Sean,
mm-hmm.
I would take her over Mr. Freeze.
Oh, you're insane. You're completely insane. You're off your rocker. And here's the reason why. I would say the reverse for her character that I would say for Arnold's. Here's what I liked about Arnold's character. When he was Victor Freeze, I'm talking about the scientist beforehand. Those sequences I found very endearing. And there's two moments where he shut up as Mr. Freeze. One where a tear goes down his face, and another one where he's whittling the ice version of her, that I thought he was good as Mr. Freeze. With Poison Ivy, it's the reverse. When she's Pamela Isley, she should be thrown off the film, thrown off the set. But for a majority of the film, she's Poison Ivy. I agree with both of you on the camp nature of what she was, but I find her very enjoyable as Poison Ivy, with kind of the same caveat I would give to Chris O'Donnell's Robin. There are a couple of lines with Poison Ivy where I'm like, ooh, that's just, you went a little too far there. But it wasn't to the same level that I had with Arnold. I would agree with you 100%, Jim, that her portrayal of Pamela Isley, I would throw out of the film before I would throw out Victor Freeze with Arnold. When it comes to the villain side of them, I would take Poison Ivy any day of the week over Mr. Freeze. You know what, though? I honestly don't know that we're all that far off from each other. And here's the reason why. We're both finding inherent flaws with both characters.
What we're kind of saying is, do you want a kick in the face, or do you want a punch in the gut?
A punch in the gut.
Which do you want? Which pain do you want?
The problem is that this movie is so bonkers that these actors, you can't blame them for how they're playing these roles, because the rest of the movie is so nutso. If you look at, maybe this isn't a fair comparison, if you look at how Uma Thurman plays Ivy here, and she's pretty much, just vamping it up all the time, and I think that there's only like one note there that she hits.
Mm-hmm.
And then you look at how, like, a Julie Newmar played Catwoman in the old series, and she is great. She's great. She really knows like how to nuance it, right? And there's not much nuance here. It's just a vampy. That gets old really quickly. It's the problem I have with the Catwoman movie, too.
And they had 3 Catwomans to pull from. Julie Newmar, Eartha Kitt, Lee Merriweather. I thought they were all great. Julie Newmar obviously is the go-to, and you're 100%. Amen. I agree with you 100%. I quite liked Michelle Pfeiffer as
Yeah.
Catwoman. And I thought she was good. That's where I think there's a separation in these. I think what's wrong with this one is the villains are not compelling. I did like Ivy better than Mr. Freeze. Ivy, and I got to put that caveat in there, though. When she was Pamela Isley, even after she turned into Ivy, anytime she put on that persona, I wanted to throw out a window. The only thing that saves the two of them, if I was playing a game of Survivor, and they're like, you've got to keep two. There's 3 villains we're going to give you a choice between. You got to keep 2. You don't have a choice. It's Arnold as Mr. Freeze. It's Uma as Pamela Isley. Or you got to keep Bane. The two of them win leaps and bounds over Bane because it's such an atrocity. Partway through the film, he turned into the Hulk. I mean, he was green. What happened? It was like, did you guys as kids like have the Hulk instant muscles, or do you know what I'm talking about? You know, they were like balloons. You'd put them on and the things would blow up. And for some reason, we thought we were the Hulk because we had those or we saw they were on TV. I had a set of them. They were balloons. I was wearing green balloons and thinking I was the Hulk. I looked more like Bane then than this guy did when he was turning into the Hulk before our very eyes. Something was so brokenly wrong with him.
This whole movie's broken. I mean, come on. The whole thing's broken. It's just nuts.
There's just so many painful stuff with Bane. There's just, and I can remember when this came out, I just, kept telling myself, just call him Veggie Boy. Just call him Veggie Boy. Just call him Veggie Boy. And that's how I got through it, because he wasn't Bane. He was Veggie Boy. He was Poison Ivy's sidekick that is a jacked up plant guy. He's not Bane. And just every time they said the word Bane, I'm like, no, Veggie Boy. And I just kept blocking that out. And even this time watching it, it so angered and annoyed me, because we got to see in the Nolanverse the true incarnation of Bane. And we got to see this physical, powerful being, but this intelligent creature who was able to take out Batman. And that was always the thing I loved about Bane, is that he's got the combination of physical strength and the intellect.
But this movie would this movie would not know what to do with an intelligent Bane. Come on.
No.
Like, what do you do with that?
Why bring him in? Why bring him in? Why not make him Veggie Boy? Why not make him Veggie Boy? They could have very easily.
It's a strange choice, because you already have Arnold Schwarzenegger in here, who is known for being this big, huge guy, and they take advantage of that in this movie. Like, why do you need like a big muscle man?
Okay, here's my problem. I have no problem with Veggie Boy. Actually, Jim, you're right on that one. Nameless Thug. You could have just called him that through the whole film. I mean, and actually refer to him as Nameless Thug. Or call him Whatnot. Whatnot's a great name for a mindless thug.
Whatnot. That reminds me of how...
Sorry, Jim.
One more way in which this movie is like a glammed up version of the 60s show is that Mr. Freeze has these goons, that the goons have names.
When they went back to the Batcave, here, I want to talk about a sequence I actually really enjoyed.
Hold on, wait, before we get to that, let me just throw something out there.
Go for it.
With the intro of Pamela Ivy and the intro of Veggie Boy, they had that bidding for Venom. Now, when they did that, I thought, okay, that's kind of a neat thing, but they have this mysterious bidder that they never reveal and they never use again.
He was embarrassed.
Why introduce a character that has zero payout and zero potential for anything?
Because this movie's broken.
Because it was the motivation for what Woodrue was doing to like use Pamela Isley's science. It was all a motivation for.
But they had all those other world leaders. They had to make this point of having this mysterious bidder. You didn't need to have it. You have these world leaders right there. Any one of them wanted to buy Bane.
None of them wanted to take credit for wanting to. Wait, Jim, do you understand? You're in a movie, and you've got to be the character who said, "I bought Bane." Would you take credit for that?
No.
You mean you can't even refer to him by his real name? You got to call him Veggie Boy. And I agree with you. I'm actually backing you up on that. You're 100% right. So you're an actor, and you say, okay, we're going to give you a role in this film. Your job is, see that green guy, that thin guy that we're going to load up with green goo? Then we are going to put him in the most ridiculous places and make it look like people didn't notice him. Like, you know, for 2 days, we're going to have him fly into town. We're going to put a hat on his head, and we're going to make it seem like people didn't really, it took him 2 days to figure out that we should probably acknowledge this. All right? Because that's what happened in the film, all right? He flew in there, and they've got a snapshot that was taken 2 days earlier of him flying in, wearing a overcoat and a hat. But he had that ridiculous...
an explanation for that one.
Okay, well, hold on. You can have your explanation for that one. But they tell this guy this, and they say, you're going to be in this movie. We're going to give you a character name. Wouldn't you immediately say, please, pay me my money, leave me nameless? And if you can, leave me out of the credits. and here's this. I'll give you half your salary back. I need money, but, like, I'm willing to pay you to leave me out of that sequence.
I think that we're having, like, a peek into the like, fugue state in which this movie was written.
They fly into Gotham, and Bane's wearing the overcoat and the hat that he was wearing when he was a chauffeur as well.
Right. They actually did explain that, because they killed everybody at the airport. It was a private jet, flew into a private part of the airport, and they killed everybody.
But where did they get the picture from?
That, I think, was the security camera.
But it took them 2 days to discover that?
Well, this bad universe, they determined that Jim Gordon's an idiot, which is something that also really angers me. You know, because I mentioned before how I hate when police and law enforcement are portrayed as stupid. You portray someone like Jim Gordon as an idiot, I get furious.
Wait, hang on, though. Hang on.
Yet,
I'm going to defend him. I'm going to disagree with you here. Jim Gordon was portrayed that way in the film only when he was under Ivy's influence. Tell me another part in the film where he was portrayed as an idiot.
Jim Gordon in these movies, you know, the Tim Burton, Joel Schumacher movies, doesn't really get much to do. You know, he's not much of a character, really.
Oh, I agree with that, but where, other than when he was under Ivy's influence, he certainly was manipulated, and I 100% agree with you that he was portrayed as being wrapped around Ivy's finger. But that was when she hit him heavily with her toxin. Other than that, when was he? And agreeing with everything Art's saying, she doesn't have a active role in any of these films.
Right. And I guess when I say an idiot, part of me is that explanation and statement that Jim Gordon is always and should be an active role in Batman stories and they should show him actively doing stuff. This guy wasn't Jim Gordon. You know, you think about the scene back the one time in Freeze's hideout when Batman and Robin are fighting. He's like, "Hey, they got away. What happened? You were there too. You let them get away as well. What were you doing?"
Yeah.
You know, you don't show Jim Gordon as a powerful cop, as a true person what Gotham needs. So that is my big issue with Gordon, and it's been my issue with you know, all of the Bat, you know, stories never showed a true Jim Gordon until we got the Nolan stuff.
I think the mistake that we're making here is at any point in this movie, if you're asking why, I think you're making a mistake. It's just not going to make sense.
True.
So when we get to the Batcave, this is where things start to pick up for me. You know, we're in there. He's doing the analysis of Freeze. We see Dick Grayson recovering. Alfred is involved. You know, again, we see that the story of Victor and Nora is brought up by Bruce, and I love that was a team discussion involving Alfred, involving Dick. That was a great sequence. I really liked that. You know, then that built the trust issues that became a big part of this film, which I liked the continued development of that, only because there's a payoff to that arc. If they stayed that way at the end of the film, I would have had a huge issue. It really was two of them being wrong. Alfred serving as the mentor role to Bruce, where that seems to be the only person that Bruce listens to, and Alfred playing off the fact that you don't understand family. Because of what you've been through, you don't understand family. This is, the relationship with Robin was only introduced in the previous film. So now, you've got to understand this is becoming a family. Because it's becoming a family, he lives here. You've got to learn how to react to family and to trust family and allow him to be himself and to bring something unique to the table. I thought that character arc in this, I was getting angry, and a lot of my passion where you hear me like talking about the villains in this, particularly Freeze. And I think it's one of the reasons why I give Ivy a little bit more of a pass, and I might be wrong to do so, but in her character arcs, she seems to be more a piece of the puzzle that facilitates this drama unfolding and pushing them back together. Whereas it seems like every time Mr. Freeze gets involved, he brings in this intense amount of camp that seems to derail things that I really was enjoying.
Yeah, that's interesting. Yeah, Mr. Freeze doesn't really affect that storyline one way or the other, I don't think, really.
Yeah, not really.
But Ivy does.
So I think that may be why I don't know that I'm necessarily disagreeing with either of you as far as, like, Art, when you were talking about you kind of put them in the same place. Maybe you're right in that. I don't know that maybe I'm giving it a pass more so because the story arc that I was really liking, I was following and riding along with Batman, with Bruce and Dick Grayson. They were getting me through the things that I didn't like in this film. And Alfred was brilliant in this. And maybe that's why I'm giving Gordon a pass, because of the fact that, I liked when there was a sequence in these films, remembering how they ran. We started off with very little interaction between Batman and Gordon, and as the film series went on, we got to see him more, treating Gordon at least as acknowledging the fact that we partner on some level, which, you're right, Jim, it was never far enough, and you're 100% correct there. I do want to share one part that you guys have every reason to chastise me for. I like it, and I shouldn't. It's the Mr. White Christmas bit, and I don't like...
I love it.
Arnold Schwarzenegger for that so much as I am a huge Rankin Bass fan. And when that was going on, I really felt like, for me, I was watching the sequence. Hi, Mr. Everybody sing, sing. And I'm sitting here I find that hysterical. I think it's just a great, great bit. And they should have stopped that scene there. And for whatever reason, just randomly have thrown that in the film. Never go to the bit with the girl and Frosty that they did afterwards. Right. If they had ended it there, it would have been said, oh, that was really humorous. I don't know why they threw that in there, but at least they went to something more interesting in the film. Because I actually liked that bit, and if you didn't, I can totally respect that you didn't, but I found that funny.
Yeah, see, for me, because you talk about those great dynamics between Bruce, Dick, and Alfred, and I agree with you. Those were some really cool scenes of them, and they're working together, and you're pulling together who is Freeze and what happened, etc. And then you go right from that really cool scene to that god-awful, horrific scene. I absolutely hated the singing. I hated him conducting them, but I also hated the fact that the goons were sitting there eating frozen food, and they were still in a block of ice. You know what? They don't have those solid, massive blocks of ice around the food. It's the food itself is frozen, and then just you heat it up and you chow down, and then you go right from that. You get to where Freeze is sitting there smoking a cigar. Now, this is a person who has to keep his body at the absolute zero freezing temperature. He can't suck in hot air into his body.
Wait, hold on.
Jim, you're asking why.
No, hold on, though. I don't know that I agree with you there. How do you know that he didn't have the cigar? See, I don't know. I didn't take it that the cigar was lit. I took it that he was blowing out cold air.
Yeah, I couldn't tell if it was lit or not, or if it was some kind of weird, like ice cigar or something.
And I agree that was stupid sequence, so I've no issue kind of agreeing with you on that. But I don't know that that was lit. But you're right. Like, why even have that there to? So I'll kind of defend you and at the same time kind of go, I don't know why that was there to begin with, other than to be funny. I know I'm wrong in liking the Mr. White Christmas, because after he started doing that, I wanted it to end. Because the second that the girl starts talking, I'm like, no, don't engage him.
Don't engage him.
Because once you start talking to him, we're in trouble again. It's like everything was going so good until you started talking to him.
So I think the conclusion here is that any scene that has Mr. Freeze and talking is going to be ruined.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, so we fast forward.
Wait, hold on. I'm going to give Jim props. That cigar is lit. I'm looking at it right now. That is a lit cigar. I got nothing on that one.
No defense.
I will say this. That sequence, I liked the White Christmas bit. Hated once he walked away. And I don't know that I agree with that I like the frozen food bit. I liked just when the White Christmas song came on. I liked Arnold conducting it. I could have done without them flashing to the crew, too. He goes through that whole sequence. Then he's quiet as he puts his hand on the door. I like the bit with Nora. The funny part is, I think they really did not know how to properly handle the identity crisis of this movie. They go to these endearing moments, and Freeze only had a handful of them when he was as Mr. Freeze, and maybe this was the third. He puts his hand on that opens up, and you see what I think was a gorgeous presentation of what Nora Freeze would look like. That's where the production values come in. I'm like, wow, what a great job they did with that. Her necklace, the story behind it, that was really great. But then they'd ruin it by letting him talk and do puns at the wrong times.
Yes.
Including when he was watching the video of them, which kind of ties into this, because I think we can move away with it after this, at least until we get to the end game battle, because we'll have to go back to it again. He has that sequence, and it was another one of those short side sequences where he's sitting there watching the movie. And what I would have had him do there when the guy interrupted him, blast him. Go ahead and freeze him. Don't talk. I hate when somebody interrupts the movie. You're trying to tell me this guy is so distraught over his wife's death that he's having this powerful moment. And you ruin it by having an unnecessary one-liner that makes it like that would not be what he would do. If he blasted him and never said anything, that same sequence would have had a different emotional resonance and would have worked. Because I liked him watching the movie. I thought there was something like, wow, there's this longing. And I saw the parts of it where I'm like, I like Arnold here. I liked the motivation. I understood why he wanted to go and do this because of his wife. This man should be angry. He's not. He's jolly. There's something really wrong with that. And he blasts this guy and tells this joke to who and why. Why would he be? Because he wasn't saying it to somebody to intimidate them. He said it himself. Why would he have a sense of humor then? It was nuts.
Yeah, I 100% agree with you. 100%. And you know what? I think what we need to do to fix this movie, what we need to do is anytime Arnold goes to speak, you just hit mute.
Right.
And I think it would actually really help out the movie if you just muted him.
Here's the problem, though. And it's where it's fully broken. Because you've got a good idea there. You're forgetting his facial expressions when he's saying some of those lines.
Yeah.
You can't take those back. They burn in your brain like the cigar he's holding. He has some wild looks in his face. None of them are scary.
When he delivers those lines, he does this weird, exaggerated Arnold face thing. At this point, I just have to. Every time I think of Mr. Freeze now, after having watched this recently, is that Mr. Freeze has glowing blue breasts. I'm just saying.
Yes,
I don't know why. It's distracting.
Here's the thing. The production values in this film, I love that you pointed them out because there are certain things that I look at them and I'm like, that is staggeringly cool.
It really is. I mean, this is a movie that is crammed with production value.
Yeah, there's certain, but then they make bizarre choices like that.
Yes.
Like his costume totally works until you do that. Then it's like, really? Like who at one point in time said, "Let's wreck this"? like aesthetically, it's very pleasing but you know what we need here? Globes. I mean, I admit, actually, out of the three of us, I am a fan of Art. I don't have the art design aesthetic. You have it, Art. You clearly do. I don't have that. And I'm so clearly relating to, this is wrong.
It's such a wrong design. I mean, I understand you put lights on things in a movie.
Sure.
If you're making a costume and you have an actor moving around in the costume, you put lights on it because it's cool. That's great. But why glowing blue breasts? Why there? Why do you want to attract my attention down there?
Well, they did it with Bat Butt, too. I mean, it's like, I don't know what they were doing. I mean, it's like, it's like they made one movie and said, you know what? The ideas we've got here are too good.
Too good.
We need to go back and really wreck this. Like, how can we do that? Because, like, it sounds like they made this movie with Bruce and Dick and this character drama, and they had them fighting other characters, and they said, no, chop all that out. Let's put in these other characters instead. Let's really mess it up.
This movie is just super fetishy. I mean, it's literally from top to bottom. It's just everything is turned up to 11 in terms of the design stuff.
Yeah,
it's all over the top. You know, you've got. I mean, this is later in the movie, but the whole thing with the giant architecture and the giant statues and the chase scene on the statues is completely bonkers.
I like that. I will say this. I like the design of Gotham only in the sense that, see, it's funny, like, some design choices they should have been pulling back from. There's other ones where I'm like, okay, this is crafting like a unique world. Right. And I like in Nolan's films, I liked the whole realistic portrayal of Gotham where it was, you know, actual cities and you could see that down and gritty. But then I also like the identity of Gotham in these movies. And I think Burton introduced those kind of styles. I do think they went a little further with it in this, but I liked the whole statue holding up the observatory.
Right.
It looked cool.
Awesome.
It looked really cool to me. So, like,
I don't know how you build that, but
you don't. I mean, it's but I was cool. I'm like, it's kind of like, actually, you touched on this earlier with Metropolis. Like, Metropolis doesn't exist and those type of things. Metropolis is kind of an idea. Gotham, to me, at its best, is an idea. And I think some of those things, when I look at it, I'm like, they're not possible, and I get the criticisms of that, but then, like, that scene was bonkers in the right way.
Yeah, I love the giant statue and the crazy architecture. And actually, for me, that sequence where the chase scene along the statue is actually, for me, one of the high points of the movie, because it's kind of like it's the movie embracing its ridiculousness completely. In that moment, the movie is like achieving its goal, kind of, because it makes no sense at all.
Well, it also is where, in my mind, there was like a plausible lunacy.
Yeah.
You know, they're jumping out of and doing like the sky surfing that they were doing.
Right.
That just did not work for me on any level. That chase scene, for whatever reason, always works for me. It shouldn't.
It's like the movie. In that scene, the movie understands its own rules. Mm-hmm. In the sky surfing scene, there's not enough craziness going on there.
Yeah, it hasn't earned it yet.
Right, yeah. It hasn't earned it yet. By the time we get to the statue chase, we're like, okay, fine.
Yeah, it's all right. Yeah, go ahead and do that.
Fine, go for it.
And Freeze jumped over, which means he's not talking now, so we can focus on Dick. And I think the difference with that was I was liking the exchange so much with Bruce and Dick,
right,
because of the fact that Bruce at this point is afraid. This is a guy who just unfroze a little while ago. I'm not having you jump over this and die. This needs to be me. And he actually captured Freeze. So it's interesting to debate. I can agree with Dick Grayson that Bruce shouldn't have done what he did, but Bruce was effective. Yes. Like, because you can't even argue that, like, it didn't work. Bruce stopped him. He jumped over and he got the bad guy. He won. You can't go back and say, if you did a different outcome, we might have caught him. Well, but I caught him. So it was. But yet you get why you've now violated your partner. I loved that. I mean, the debate there, I think, was interesting.
Yeah, they do a pretty good job of like stringing that relationship through the scenes in this movie, despite all the nutso stuff.
I want to step back just a little bit because before we get to that, Wayne Manor, they showed the outside of it. And this is when Barbara shows up. And this is actually a character we really need to talk about at this point.
Yeah.
So we see this great shot of Wayne Manor, and I'm guessing we're probably going to have some interesting different opinions on Barbara. I remember initially seeing the movie and having issues that it wasn't Barbara Gordon. Mm-hmm. I think because of everything else surrounding it this time, I've watched this twice now for this particular run of what we're doing. I did not have a single issue with Barbara at her age because, we're roughly portraying her around the same age range as Dick Grayson. Mm-hmm. I liked the flirtation between the two of them when she showed up on the scene. So that was something I've always enjoyed, the playing in that. I liked the fact that they played her as very smart. She has computer skills. Mm-hmm. It wasn't just a matter of the fact that she... some issues with the fact that, she was a little bit of a bad girl kind of going off and do the biking thing. But yet I was looking at it as this is the age where she was rebelling. Yet we're still portraying her as having the smarts and all that. But that's my opinion. I actually quite liked her in this time around. So I'll just leave it that way. Art, where are you at? And then Jim, where are you at?
Batgirl. I don't have many feelings about this character in this movie, really. I think the way the movie is put together, I kind of think that the filmmakers didn't care either because they introduce her and then it's like a half hour later and they bring her back in. Like, oh yeah, we have a storyline here with Batgirl. I can take her or leave her. I'm not irritated by her. I don't like her. I don't dislike her. She's just kind of there.
Jim?
Again, with her not being Barbara Gordon, I didn't have an issue with because they don't do anything with Jim Gordon. So why introduce a character of that's an offshoot of someone they're not using?
Yeah,
I think the only issue because now I like the actress, and I've always I when the movie came out, I was like, oh, that's kind of cool that she's going to be there because again, I've seen a couple movies she was in. I was like, oh, that's kind of neat, but the question I always had then, I still have now, is why does Alfred have an American niece?
You're asking questions again.
An American niece that lives over in London.
Right.
It
does beg
they should have gotten
kind of explanation, but
they should have gotten a British actress,
or just explain it somehow. I mean,
But Alfred went to school in Oxbridge.
Right.
So she was going to school where her uncle went to school.
Right. Mm-hmm. Alfred's also British, and his sister is British.
But who did her sister marry?
Well, true. So maybe...
They've established that the family's world travelers, because look where her brother is. Look where his brother is.
Some American guy, I guess. Was the dad.
Because wasn't Peg an actress? Or Margaret?
Yeah.
Well, that was the other thing I had. Another question I had, and you may have just answered it, because... the picture that Alfred has is signed on the front. Love, Peg. Now, they did that for the whole plot story with the password, yada, yada. But have you ever given a picture to a family member and signed the front of it?
I have. I have. I did that as a joke, actually. I did. Well, see, it's not, and it doesn't validate or invalidate what you're saying. Remember, we got high school photos. And you get this. Did you get the stack of them that you like? You took like the high school pictures senior year.
Yeah.
You get that like stack of pictures that look like playing cards of yourself. They're not really playing cards, but I mean they're that size.
Right.
This tells you where I was at mentally. I was probably still a 10-year-old at that point. I signed them all and gave them to people.
What a dork!
And I totally 100%. That's what I was going for, and your reaction's 100% correct, and it stands very true, which is why I'm telling the story. Because it's if you don't understand the concept, then yes, I was being in fact a dork. It's why I do a podcast about comics and all that.
Kind of adorable though.
Yeah, but that's what I did, and what I did is on the back, I would put little like personal messages like "keep on trucking" or something like that.
Look, they're collectible now.
Yes, yeah, that's exactly what. And no two were alike.
I'll tell you right now, I'm going to look through my pictures, see if I still kept it from high school.
Well, they're individualized. That's worth a lot of the money now.
Yeah, absolutely. That's they can get you like a dime. Whereas back in high school, they get you nothing.
Yeah.
They went up a whole 10 cents.
So including Batgirl here, though, does one thing, is it strengthens what you've been focusing on, Sean, is the family story.
Mm-hmm.
It kind of makes sense, to add in this new player who kind of, in a way, she forces Bruce and Dick and everyone else to accommodate this idea of a family.
The one thing that I think that she served a purpose of, Alfred's arc, the point there was to convince us Alfred was dying. Mm-hmm. And also that Alfred cared so much about this family that he wanted to take care of it. He was the patriarch here.
Right.
So what he was trying to do with her is you don't want to bring in the guy that's going to replace Alfred because now you're bringing in another butler that knows, and then you've got to end off the movie, especially if the series is continuing, which is what they were continuing with. You got now a guy who knows Bruce and Dick are Batman, and you're going to release him back onto the world. Why would you do that?
Right.
In the case of Batgirl, you introduce the Batgirl archetype to the film series, but through this method, while at the same time establishing that Alfred went to the lengths of reaching out to the only person that he felt he could trust to take over his role as Batman's butler. That's really what he was doing with his brother, and the whole purpose of her doing that. So you establish that with her, but what I liked is when she cracked the code and discovered that they were Batman and Robin, you also showed a savvy that Alfred had. Alfred knew she'd probably do it.
Yeah.
And he had a contingency plan. A lot of times we don't relate some of Bruce's skills, like the being one step ahead, to Alfred enough. And
that's interesting.
I'm a big fan, for as much as I do understand what Jim's saying as far as Jim Gordon getting enough props, and probably why I'm so forgiving of it is this film so brilliantly, out of everybody in the film, I think Alfred really had some shining moments. And when that virtual Alfred comes up and he I thought this guy was dying, and I'm like, oh my God, look how cool Alfred is. Alfred planned for the fact that she'd probably butt her nose in. He is so on top of everything. And to the point of recognizing that she needs this, to kind of get her on the right track the same way that it is Dick Grayson. So he had a suit ready for her and stuff like that. He knew everything she was up to when she thought she was being so sly. I thought that part was really cool.
That's interesting. It's like Alfred as the master schemer. I think it's actually kind of cool.
So that worked for me. And that's where I thought the movie had an identity crisis. I'm like, you've got this going on, and then you go to, I'm Mr. White. I'm like, what are you doing?
It's like the movie doesn't trust itself enough. Like they didn't have the confidence to either do the story you're talking about or do the Batglam movie. Wanted to have it both ways, or couldn't. They didn't have the confidence, to think that they could sell a movie that was about what you're talking about.
They needed to just chill.
Just chill. Yeah, it's unfortunate because that would have been a neat movie, but I don't think that it's a movie Joel Schumacher is capable of.
I'm glad we talked through some of your issues, both of you, with Ivy, because it's helped me to see further, why am I giving her a pass? Because the arguments that were being made were right. It really is because she wasn't an issue to getting in the way of their story arc. She kind of just added to it and enhanced it. She was kind of a foil for them, whereas Freeze just seems to get in the way at every turn.
It like Freeze walks in and starts talking, and everything comes to a screeching halt.
Speaking of the motorcycle race, will we finally see that?
Okay, wait. Let's go back slightly.
Okay.
What is with the gangs in Gotham City?
Oh, yes.
Where do these guys come from? Who are these people? Where do they get their Laser Floyd show from?
I'm gonna take a beating on this one. The visual element of them I liked. When the actual kind of fight sequence and Veggie Boy gets wrapped and just steps on the ground, they go flying, that I didn't like. but the visual of him, he's like, oh my pretty, 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 and just a little bit creepy, a little bit thing. I kind of like them.
That's because you're living in a gangster paradise.
It's like all of a sudden we're living in like Neo Tokyo from Akira, right? It's like, where did this come from? Who are these people?
I kind of liked it.
It kind of works with this weird Gotham, with the huge. It's in keeping with the glam neon styles of this movie, but I just remember the first time I saw these gangs, I was like, wait, what? What are these gangs like in this town? This is a very different kind of gang that I've seen.
I like the little kid seemed like a leader. He was up on there. He had like a mohawk going, like a big wavy mohawk going, and he seemed to be like people were listening to him.
Super goofy. Yeah. And then they have the motorcycle race.
Yeah.
Now, here's the thing with that motorcycle race, and maybe you guys can explain something to me. You have that, it's all right, cool visuals with the racing and all that kind of special effects and stunt work and whatnot, but they intentionally drive down that half-finished bridge, and that's when they drop the bombs and they wipe out. But they were intentionally driving down a dead-end bridge. Now, it was the race to the dead-end bridge and back, or did they turn wrong?
It was a trap.
What?
It was a trap.
But they were running, all of them were running the race towards that point.
Right, because they wanted to run Barbara off of it.
But why was she wasn't being tricked into going down there. She was openly driving down there.
She didn't know that's where they were going.
She had to know the route of the race.
No, she didn't, because they were asking her about a different race right beforehand. They said, "Are you the one that they named a race beforehand?"
Right.
And they said, "Are you the one that ran that?"
Yeah,
which is a different race.
Right.
So why would she know the route of this one?
Because you enter a race, you know the route, or you should.
Why would she know the route? She was from England. She's from England. How would she know all the routes? She hadn't been there long enough. No, seriously, how would she know all the routes? So when you go to a town and you drive down a street for the first time,
right?
You know the route?
But if I'm going to get in a race, I'm going to know where I'm supposed to race.
I'm watching the race right now. I'm watching the race.
Jim, you're acting like this is NASCAR. Like these are people doing these legal things and they're given a map before they start doing this. These are the gangs of Gotham. And you're expecting them...
You're still going to have a definite route or a definite thing you have to race. You're not just going to go in there saying, oh, I just ride wherever I feel like riding. You're going to you got to go from point A to point B.
This is like Death Race 2000, man.
Yeah, this is exactly what this was. It was Death Race 2000.
Like guys dying here. Like motorcycles blowing up.
See, I don't think that the point of the race wasn't Death Race. I think the point of the race was a race.
No, the point of the race was to kill her.
One wins.
The point of the race was to kill her.
Well, that was their plan. That wasn't the point of the race. The banker, Coolio, he wasn't gonna. He wasn't setting her up. He had a race. He had a route that he.
No, but you're forgetting that the other riders were messing with her the entire time. They were leading her in a certain direction.
I'm watching this right now. It's not real clear. It doesn't seem to me. It doesn't seem real clear. Like it doesn't seem like they're hurting her per se, but it's kind of hard to read.
I'm watching.
They had an ambush set up at the edge of the bridge, but why the heck would you drive to the end of a dead end bridge?
See, I don't think you're asking.
Along, peer pressure. I say chalk it up to peer pressure.
They got diverted because of a garbage truck.
Okay. Yeah, you're right. So maybe it is. It's a very elaborate scheme, whatever it is.
They started heading towards a garbage truck.
Okay.
And then they had to turn right there. I think Art's saying it the best. He's right. It's a very disjointed race. I guess I will admit I like Art's answer probably better than anything because he's like, but I'm seeing the part where they get diverted due to a truck. So it kind of addresses Jim's question.
Yeah.
Why they were all of a sudden diverted down a path. It actually looks a lot like Grease because they're going now through under the bridge, the water areas.
Right.
But the truck, start driving right towards this path that a truck was coming down. It was a big garbage truck.
And is a truck there on purpose? I don't know.
I don't think so. I think, Art, you're right. I think that was happenstance.
I think we're thinking this through way too much.
But here's my real question. It's funny.
Who's driving that truck?
Yeah.
Why are they there?
We're asking insane questions here at this point. I think my real question is, why does nobody think that a guy wearing a Robin helmet is Robin?
Right.
Well, okay. If you're in those gangs, anything goes.
Yeah, that's true.
Clearly, a guy with a Robin helmet means nothing.
But I would think Batgirl afterwards might be asking the question.
Batgirl might, yeah.
Because she didn't know at this stage that it was Robin. She hadn't discovered that yet. He's clearly wearing and why would he be wearing a Robin helmet?
Maybe he's a big Robin fan.
When they introduced him last movie, he was the motorcycle rider, and that was the helmet he had.
Oh, yeah. Very good, Jim. Yeah, you're right.
Okay,
Yeah.
Fine.
But you think he would have stopped using that when he
adopted that persona, right?
Yeah. But no, you're right. Actually, Jim, you're right. Continuity-wise, it makes sense, though. Good catch, because I forgot about that. But you're right.
Catch.
I don't know. I'm watching. I just got to that part where they did it, and it looks like all the other guys stopped ahead of time, and I think that's why I looked at it as more of a trap. But I think it was happenstance because of the garbage truck. So I think Jim's right. They knew about a set route, but the garbage truck diverted them, and
it really begs the question: who's in that truck?
The little kid with the mohawk.
I'm Mr. White Christmas. I'm Mr. Fun.
Da-da.
If there's anything that goes wrong in the movie, I'm convinced it's Mr. Freeze.
Okay.
and right after the scene on the bridge, there's the motorcycle scene, and then there's them back at Wayne Manor, and then there's the great scene with Mr. Freeze sculpting the statue of Nora. I'm just letting it play from here.
The sister's visit comes in a little later. That's when it turns out that Ivy comes to rescue him.
Right.
I should jump back because the discussion with Batgirl and Dick Grayson leads to them going inside and having a debate over the fact that Alfred's dying, and she knows it, but Dick Grayson didn't, but Bruce did. And I liked that Bruce came in with that line, Alfred is not sick, he is dying. That's when the reveal starts going into that Freeze's research into that phase 1 could be the possible thing that could save Alfred. I liked how that story gradually played out because it gave some motivation for Bruce and Dick to not just beat Freeze, but for Bruce to appeal to Freeze. Yeah. And I really liked where that was going. It took a character who I'm like, if you could shoot Mr. Freeze out of a cannon, well, I'm like, but do it in a way where he's like a boomerang. And he comes back just at the end, smacks into something, and he's coherent enough that you can talk to him. He couldn't even do that part correctly, though. Well, I'll wait until we get to that one.
Now, when Ivy breaks out...
I just noticed something. When Ivy breaks him out and Bane comes through a wall here, he's pushing a shopping cart with Mr. Freeze's armor in it. Why? I'm not sure. He looks like a hobo. But he comes through a wall, and there's a guard in a room, and hanging on a hanger is the Riddler's costume.
And Two-Face is across from it.
Oh, yeah. And Two-Face too? Okay.
That was the property room, the equipment room, or because they put a sign there.
Criminal property locker.
Yeah.
Locker.
Yeah.
And of course, Ivy breaks him out, but Freeze has got to throw out his one-liners. Oh, a laundry service that delivers. And
no, wait, hold on. Hold on. You're leaving an important part of that out. Oh. A laundry service that delivers. Wow. If you leave out the wow, it's a bad enough line. The way you delivered it is a bad enough line. But when you put the wow in it, it's we don't want you to just massacre this. We want you to make people's brains burn.
And here's the thing: I want to know how much of this is Arnold, because we're laughing at Arnold, but he is just an actor, and this is the dialogue he was given.
I think the issue is maybe what I was saying before, is that this is not Arnold's strength. His strength is not in the nuanced delivery of comedy. That's not why you hire him. And on top of that, you give him these awful lines. So what do you expect?
Well, here's part of the problem. Arnold, I mentioned a lot of films before that I really enjoy of Arnold's, but The trick is those films are well written to Arnold's strengths.
Right.
And one-liners are a part of that, but they're spread out and they're catchy. And they happen at a point where when you do one of them, they become memorable because they're surrounded by so much coolness that like you can't help but high five during it. When you can't take those and put them together into a clip film.
No,
you can't.
It's like the old joke of, highlighting everything on the page is the same as not highlighting anything at all.
Yeah.
You know?
Sally, this is my weak arm, Sally. What happened to Sally? I let him go.
Let him go.
I will admit the one line during that bit, his size smaller, makes me slimmer. That part I did chuckle at, which is sad because there was a line or two that he would have every so often where I would chuckle, but it was so lost in the fact that everything surrounding it was so awful. It was too many. It was way too much. That was really part of the problem. And maybe, Jim, that was your problem you had with Dick Grayson. If you've got these constant lines, you've got Ivy doing them. You've got Arnold doing them an excessive amount. And Ivy really, in fairness, she was doing them almost as much. I do think I gave her a pass because of her being such a glue that led certain things that I was liking together. But when you've got so much of that happening, if you guys watch the film, or Jim, if you watch the film again, pay attention to Dick Grayson. He is not doing them on any level compared to these two. But when you compare it to all of the nonsense going on, it may be for you, and maybe you're right to feel that way, it gets to be way, way too much. It would have been a better film if Dick Grayson was the only one doing them. Yeah. Because then you would have had the right balance of them, and it would have just been fine. But the real problem with this film is you can't make a film a constant one-liner because you start to lose the story.
I think back to the last film when he's introduced and he's in the costume and they're going after Riddler and Two-Face, and he looks at it and goes, "Holy rusted metal, Batman."
Yes.
What?
Yes.
It's metal. It's rusted and it's got holes in it.
Oh,
I laughed at that scene. I thought that was hysterical.
That scene works because it stands out.
Yeah.
And whereas here, you're just inundated with it.
I start to feel better when you see sequences like a gentleman does not discuss his ailments. It's not civilized. Yes. Great line. That's a great line. And then leading to Bruce having a discussion with him where he's playing off of what Barbara and Dick were saying. And this is why I think I really liked Barbara in this, because there were certain sequences that she had, and maybe it's the same reason why I liked Ivy so much. It facilitates these powerful moments where he heard her saying, he's a butler. Why would you think he'd like this? You know, that was really what she was asking Dick Grayson, because she didn't get it, because she wasn't there in the middle of it. And Bruce and Alfred having this real powerful discussion, which I don't recall seeing much of. Alfred, do you regret your life? I remember it in comics happening, but it's not a common occurrence for Bruce to really address the fact that you've dedicated your life to me. And then as I've grown up, instead of moving on and having your own life, which you could have done at any point in time, I'm an adult now. You don't need to be here to be a parent anymore. You stayed on. And not only that, you've dedicated yourself to Batman. You've become Batman's butler, not just Bruce Wayne's, Batman's. You're really living two lives and two roles, and in many ways covering for me in a huge level, which becomes a third role.
Well, he's essentially indispensable. I mean, Alfred is indispensable. You don't have a Bruce Wayne or Batman really without Alfred, I don't think.
And it's a vocation that becomes priceless because Alfred really, you don't see him leave. Very rarely do you see Alfred leave and go anywhere. In the sense that, you know, he goes to the store, obviously stocks the place up and things like that, but he doesn't go on vacation.
No.
When that happens in a comic, it's kind of like, what? After like 75 years, Alfred's gone on 3 vacations?
Really, he is as dedicated as Bruce Wayne is.
Mm-hmm. And I like that stuff.
I think that we need a fan edit for Sean, which has no Mr. Freeze.
Well, they had a fan edit to it. I actually have it.
Okay.
One of our listeners sent it to me.
Oh, cool.
And they cut out like a whole bunch of stuff.
And?
Oh, the fan edit definitely improves things. It's interesting here's the problem. Once you've seen it, you've seen it.
Right.
You can't see it.
See it. So it's like, you know, the problem with the fan edit, it's only good if you haven't seen the film. Like, if that's your first exposure to it and you go, wow, what a great movie, cool. But if you know that those missing things were there, it's like it's like your example earlier with Superman 3 being mixed in with Superman 4. You still know that that's Superman 3 mixed in with Superman 4. You can't unwatch Nuclear Man. You just can't.
Sad as it is.
Yeah.
Sad but true.
The 10 security guards in the hospital. Wait, the 10 security guards, they weren't killed. They were in the hospital.
Oh, right.
Oh, okay, they were in the hospital.
Yeah, the 10 security guards were in the hospital. So I'm like sitting there looking at. That's why I'm like sitting here like, why did I still have a problem with that? Jim's, if they're dead, why do I have a problem with that?
I thought they were
They
dead.
aren't. They were in the hospital. So I'm going to go back to what I said. 2 days. Okay. 2 days. and they had like. I mean, Gordon was pretty clear that was them coming in. I mean, Bane was really in a good disguise. Ivy's the one that stuck out like a sore thumb. I mean, 2 days. That was like, who wrote this? And like, did not look at it and go, first of all, why was that even necessary? The surveillance camera was enough. You didn't need to show them coming in on an airplane. Why did somebody say, I got a great idea? We've got surveillance footage of them escaping. But just to make sure people know that is in fact Ivy and Bane and not someone posing as them, let's show them in disguise arriving from 2 days earlier because they put 10 people in the hospital. Or killed them. It didn't matter. Why did that even make sense? Why even have that? I don't get it.
Once again, we have entered into the fugue state that is the making of this
Why?
movie. Bonkers fugue state.
Even the Poison Ivy line, like, that's why every Poison Ivy action figure comes complete with him, because I'm a lover, not a fighter. Do you guys remember Stretch Armstrong?
Yeah.
Bane is like they took a mask and put it on that lizard guy that was his enemy. I don't know what the name of that character was. There was a green lizard that was Stretch Armstrong's enemy. And I had Stretch Armstrong, but I remember from the TV commercials that his enemy was this lizard. And I don't think Stretch Armstrong was like a character in anything else other than being Stretch Armstrong. I think it was just, that was what he was. And they said, well, if we're going to twist this guy up, we got to give him a villain to twist into. So let's give him a lizard. But I kept looking at Bane because of the fact that he does not look real. He looks like that lizard guy with like a Bane costume on.
Vac-Man was the arch enemy of Stretch Armstrong, but it looks like he's orange. No.
Wow.
Sorry, I just looked this up.
No.
There was a Stretch Monster. Yes,
that's it.
His name was. He had two bad guys, maybe three. There's a like Vac-Man who's like orange-red.
Okay.
And then there was Stretch Monster.
Okay, the monster's the one I'm talking about then. So it's Stretch Monster. Because Stretch Monster's green, correct?
Yes.
Okay. That's the one that I'm talking about. I didn't know about the other ones.
Stretch X-Ray. Sorry, I'm just looking at pictures here now. But yes, you're talking about Stretch Monster.
Did any of you guys have this, like Stretch Armstrong?
No.
I knew someone who had it when I was a kid. And, of course, I desperately wanted it, but didn't have it.
He'd rip, like, because you invariably would stretch it, like, too far because you had to, because that's, like, what you wind up doing eventually. And because he had syrup inside, you'd put him in the freezer and you'd be able to use him again. I don't know why that worked.
Weird.
Yeah, I mean, like, he ultimately would rip again because he'd already ripped and it was always in the same spot because once that happened, it happened. But, like, you could put him in the freezer and it had to do with the fact that I guess it just froze a certain way that it almost like the syrup acted like a glue to his arms and you could start playing with him again. My mom would come home from grocery shopping, and in the ice bin, I'd have Stretch Armstrong in there, and some of his syrup would invariably leak over the ice because that was back in the days of ice cube trays. So I'd put him in there, and I'm a kid, so I'm thinking about my toy. I'm not thinking about the fact that Mom just put ice cubes in there. So we got ice cubes. You pull them out and put them in your drink, and there's a Stretch Armstrong syrup.
Stretch Armstrong's blood.
Yeah.
His highly toxic innards, I'm sure.
The whole sequence with Robin in the tub of goo.
Yeah.
The battle drove me nuts because of the fact that Ivy and Bane were really ruining it because it was leading to more of the debate between Bruce and Dick that I really liked. But I think I was giving it a pass because when that eventually happened and Dick Grayson came out of the goo, you got to see the two of them, like Dick's really mad now. And it's a genuine reaction to, he's mad that he's in that state. He's mad that he and Bruce aren't gelling together because clearly there's no reason why the two of them shouldn't have won. And I totally agree with him about that. She starts talking with Mr. Freeze about her plans for the future. And this is where it really, like, something that was already broken. They do this Adam and Eve thing, and I'm sitting here like, okay, I kind of get the premise here. She used killing Nora as a way to get into Freeze's head and give him this motivation to be super twisted. I actually liked the premise behind it. But when she took the creature from Little Shop of Horrors out and started saying, this is what we're going to make, the Adam and Eve thing was fine. Why do they need to keep adding things into there that shouldn't be there? I got that. The motivation was cool. I was like sitting here, I'm buying into this. I don't like Freeze, but I get what she's doing, and the manipulation was working for me. Okay. At some point in time, the guy's like, this is making too much sense. We need to throw in something that doesn't work here.
Hold on. This movie does not know when to quit.
It doesn't.
And Sean,
yes.
You're misspeaking. It's
What?
not Adam and Eve. It's Adam and Evil.
Further proof that everything he says burns in your brain.
They're killing me, man.
But here's the thing. I had moved on from that, apparently from my comments. So I agree with you. You're right. And amen. But I had moved on from that enough that I'm like, okay, I'm going to acknowledge Adam and Eve or whatever, They bring out the Little Shop of Horrors monster. It was like sitting here. We lost half the audience with having Arnold talk again. Let's really stick it to the rest of them.
Let's introduce another thing.
But then they go back to something cool.
Yeah.
The whole, that's where the observational skills came in about Victor's research and honesty in that debate where Bruce is like looking at Dick Grayson saying, I want her too. That's my point. I liked where this was going. You had this great development where Bruce is like, you don't get it. I know you want her, and I know we're like having this tension between us because of that, but don't you see there's something deeper at work here we're being played because of the fact that we already have these issues? It's, wow, this movie tries to be intelligent, but that was a Muppet.
Get the Muppet out of my movie.
Like, what are you doing?
And the thing I remember from that scene, because seeing this in the movie theater, that was you go from the one to that, and you do have that cool dialogue between the two of them. But the one line when Bruce just looks at him and goes, she's trying to kill you, Dick. And I remember people in the theater laughing at that because... just because of his name and just the way it looks like, the way it came across, especially those of us with an 8th grade mindset, it's okay. It's kind of funny. And that always like he's calling him a name, and it always takes me out of it, that scene. And it's a cool scene again, but I still laugh at that.
Wait. Here's the problem. This is where you should be ashamed of yourself. That it took that scene to take you out of it. They had a Muppet.
Well, hold on.
Jim, they had a Muppet in a glass. I don't need people laughing in the theater because a serious moment had a line in it that might be chuckle-worthy. At this point, that's light humor. I mean, they had a Muppet, and they wanted to populate the planet with it. I mean, Adam and Eve are going to populate the planet with Muppets.
The Muppet reminds me of now. What year did this movie come out? This came out in
87.
87, yes.
Really? No. Wait, no. 97.
97. I'm sorry. Yes.
Right. Yes. Okay. It's interesting because I'm surprised. Almost all of the effects and stuff in this movie are done, with traditional practical methods. And it's actually pretty impressive because this is a movie that has a lot of stunts. In a modern movie, you would have like a bunch of, computer generated stuff and amplify it all up with CGI, right?
Yeah.
In this movie, it's almost all practical and just like breaking things and blowing stuff up and wire work and lots of stunt work, and it's actually pretty impressive in that regard.
You know what's funny, Jim? We should be ashamed of ourselves for not knowing that the date was after 87 because the first one, 89.
That's why I really, are you? It's not 87. There's no way.
We were graduating high school when the first one came out, and there were people carving bat symbols in their head because of how big the phenomenon was of the first. I remember at school walking down the hallways, and you see bat symbols. What? That was like crazy stuff.
And by 97, it was like, yeah, okay.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Now they're just embarrassed to have that Batman tattoo, as of this movie. I'm going to hide my Batman tattoo now because that movie was terrible.
Team means trusting a partner. And Bruce tying that into Alfred. I am asking you, friend, partner, brother, will you trust me now? I liked that part. I geeked out at that part. It showed that he was listening. But then Mr. Freeze ruined that. Right afterwards, he comes in. He's coming to the telestroom. He's taking over with a hi. But it's not enough. He said, you know what? At this point in the film, I've done enough corny lines. I've ruined enough scenes. I need a sideshow act to come with me. It's not just me. I've brought Bane. And Bane's going to be the one to put down the bomb. 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 Bomb.
He does not know when to quit.
Hold on.
Like, bomb. Oh, you got one worse?
The great line, no matter what they tell you, Mr. Bane, it is the size of your gun that matters.
No, bomb.
Jeez.
Dick meeting up with Ivy. I liked that sequence, not because I thought Ivy was particularly great in it. It's, again, an example of where now the storylines move forward. We knew that Bruce's line got to Dick Grayson, but we didn't see the payoff until here. Right. And I've got to admit, his whole Nightwing outfit, I liked it. What was ruined, it was Bat Butt in the beginning. Other than that, it actually, the Nightwing-esque style wasn't bad. I really quite liked it. So he's walking up to her and doing that. I love the plastic on the lips, but I love how he played that. He's like, she's so cocky. She thinks she can tell me anything, and I'm just going to die when she kisses me. So I'm going to use that. You want me to kiss you? Tell me everything. She's like, okay, I'll tell him you're going to die when I kiss you anyway. Having the plastic on the lips, I thought was great. I thought that sequence played out brilliantly.
Yeah.
I also liked that it led to Batman and Robin having to fight the plants and Batgirl showing up on the scene. I thought that sequence was a really great fight sequence up until the end.
Yeah, why did her own plant trap her?
Because it's not a plant, it's a Muppet.
You know, that Ivy, that's because you have this pretty cool fight sequence. I like, again, the choreographer for the stunts and all that did a really good job with throwing down. The plant catches, but we also do get that terrible Ivy line that's needed for the movie, needed for the story, but it's, why couldn't they just do a good matter and just do a good fight sequence and move on? And then they got to keep throwing those in. I don't understand.
They have to use the ice mobile, right?
Well, yeah, hold on. With that one, you know.
I'm just looking at the ice mobile right now. Later
let me ask you guys a question.
No.
Okay. So
no questions.
We know we have only 12 minutes to thaw Gotham.
Well, this is your problem. You're giving them an extra minute.
No, it's 12 minutes.
No, it was 11.
It was 11 minutes then. Fine.
Yes.
We got 11 minutes to thaw Gotham. Let's change our outfits and change our vehicles. When did they have time to do that?
Superman
did Alfred make
picked up a flag and put it on the moon before saving everybody. I don't know. I agree with you. They needed to gear up. Don't you understand?
You got to gear up, man.
You didn't gear up before you go into a fight?
Yeah, you got to gear up.
Well, look at what they did is they got new gear, and the gear actually helped them win.
Oh, true. But when did they have time? Because they only had 11 minutes.
You don't understand.
But they read the script.
Yes.
They read the script and said, we've got time.
Do you understand how a montage works? They had a montage. That's right. I actually, before that, the one bit that I actually agree with you. That's funny. The one bit that I really liked was during that whole montage, before that montage, I should say, Bruce, it's me, Barbara.
Yeah.
Like, anybody had to tell her what that... I've always loved the masks on the face for that reason, but I still love them, so it works. Oh, she knows who we are. We'll have to kill her. We'll kill her later. We have work to do. I actually liked those lines, because that was buddy cop.
Right.
It wasn't too over the top. It wasn't them trying... It was told very... almost stoically, in the way it was good stoic humor, the way that they did it. And they moved along.
Yeah.
But, Sean, the more you talk about and focus on that storyline, I really want to see that movie.
Yeah, I do
really
too.
do.
Yeah.
The movie that's really focused on that storyline and those themes and doesn't have all this nonsense, because that's probably a pretty cool story.
Well, going off of Jim's 11 minutes, all the stuff they did in 11 minutes, besides changing the vehicles, they had a full street battle that happened in, like, each sequence had to have happened in a minute.
Well, they're fast. They've got...
And getting from point A to point B in 11 minutes was impressive, because Gotham's a pretty good sized city. I'm going to assume it's about the size of New York City. So can you travel from?
Wait, hold on one second, Jim. I think you're wrong on this. Freeze didn't start freezing the city until after their fight was done.
Well, and they do have jets on the back of their vehicles, so they're pretty fast.
So if they went back and got changed prior to going into the battle with Freeze, where he was actually doing that.
Yes, I'm actually watching this sequence right now. Yeah.
So they did have time for that.
Okay. Well,
because he started freezing the city, and they're driving in their ice vehicles. He's got a wealth of vehicles in there.
Yes,
he had a bat snowmobile, a motorcycle that works on the snow. 2 bat snowmobiles, actually, because Dick Grayson had one, too. And that's when the 11 minutes comes up. He starts talking about the 11 minutes as they're heading towards the telescope. So they're bursting through these icy covered things. That's when he's talking about the 11 minutes.
Okay.
I don't know if that's actually 11 minutes of film time, though, that all that happens in.
Let's not get technical.
No.
Yeah, let's just throw that aside, okay?
Did you like... Here's the one thing. The visual styling of the costumes, when they switched to those ice suits or whatever, I actually quite liked.
Yeah.
It's all of a sudden... Well, it's symbolic. Like, now they are a unit, and their costumes match, and we're all together now.
I liked when Barbara saved Dick Grayson. As they were falling down, he tried to save her first, and then she saved him.
Yes,
I liked that she was portrayed in this movie as competent. Hunting down Freeze when they were back at the Batcave, she was a part of that team discussion. It wasn't just the two of them and her kind of standing off in the background. She was an active part. Like, she was actually jumping in and filling a role. I thought that team dynamic was really important. I'm a big fan of Barbara. Obviously it's not Barbara Gordon, but the idea behind and the concept behind Batgirl, where she brings an intelligence to the table that would be something that would enhance the team. She is not eye candy or just there for that purpose. I thought they handled that part well with her.
Yeah, I'll agree on that one. She does. She's an active part of the team, and there is a strength to her. So it's, again, I didn't have too much major issue with her in the story. It just... all the other stuff it was painful. And getting to these points, like this final fight with Freeze and with Veggie Boy and everything that happened there was some cool action. There was some neat, as I said, the choreography, some of the visual stuff, the look of the costumes, all that stuff was kind of neat. But there was just so much pain before this that no matter what happened, I was brain numb.
Yeah, but this is a movie that will numb the senses.
Yeah.
The part where he appeals to Freeze, I thought was brilliant. I really liked that. And it was funny how, like, that pulled me back into a film I needed to be pulled back into. It was easy for me to, like, every time I watch the sequence, because I'm watching it now, too, like Art is, I'm watching the sequence where Bane and Batgirl and Dick Grayson are fighting, and I'm sitting here like, they, in, like, 7 seconds, kicked out the tube, and he just deflated. Like, at no point in time in the film, anybody else did that.
No one thought of that.
Hey, well, why don't we try that?
Yeah. I mean,
Now, here's the funny, with me and how much I hate the one-liners and the cheesy stuff. Mm-hmm. And I can't believe I'm actually going to say this, but I didn't completely hate the take 2 of these and call me in the morning.
I didn't either because of the fact that we knew it was going back to Alfred.
Yeah. That was the only time I didn't absolutely hate his ice. Well, it wasn't an ice pun; it was a doctor pun.
Yeah, he didn't. Here's the thing. Oh yeah. So you're saying he was showing dynamic range?
Exactly.
Yeah, it's just, he's like moving away. He's growing as a character.
Yes.
Yeah. It only took him like almost 2 hours. This movie was over 2 hours.
Yeah.
Yep. It's 2 hours and 4 minutes or something.
This is crazy.
It is crazy.
I hate you, Sean.
I gotta say, after that, we deserved a reward. And I thought the sequences with Alfred, rescuing Alfred, I thought were a reward.
Yeah, I really did like the Alfred.
After this, anything would seem like a reward.
Yeah. The other thing I really liked, when we see Ivy locked up, her punishment was to be with Freeze. Now, I don't feel like what they should have done is put some form of cage between them.
Right.
But like she wouldn't be aware the cage was there. And they make sure that she has to hear everything he says.
That's cruel and unusual punishment.
Yeah, I mean, like, is that considered like, capital punishment? Is that, is it really like the death penalty? Like putting her in there with him, or?
And initially, she's very excited about the fact that she's in the cell with him, and then, like a week later, she just wants to kill him.
Yeah. To the pain.
The pain.
Bomb.
Bomb. Oh, man.
Oh, God.
I like the three of them running off together in the end.
Yeah.
I secretly thought they were running away from Freeze.
Oh, please.
They're trying to get out of the movie. Look, there's a screen. Let's see if we can jump through it.
I'm just noticing here at the end. I mean, I've kind of noticed it all the way through, but this is a movie that really likes color contrasts.
Yes, it does.
Like the way that this movie is lit is like, I don't think that there's any kind of light that doesn't have a color to it. It's either green light or red light or yellow light. There's not much white light or just plain light.
Speaking of green light, you got to question who green lighted this.
Someone greenlit this.
Because they must have only shown them the parts of the script that were good. Because it's about half of it. There is like, half of the film. There's like a second. There's a hidden film in this one.
Again, I think that we're presented with a movie that's more than one movie. I think that there are two movies here. One is Batman and Robin and Batgirl and Poison Ivy. Okay.
Every refrigerator needs a freezer.
Starting our own puns.
And then you have that movie, and then you have the other movie, which is like Mr. Freeze's stand-up act. Right?
Yes. Well, that would be like the produce drawer. Oh, man. So here's the ultimate question. Is this something you would watch again?
I would totally watch this movie again. Like I said at the beginning, of the three movies that you insisted we watch, of the three, I enjoyed watching this one the most. I think because it's so nuts. And you just have to go with it. It's you kind of can't stop. It just won't quit, and it doesn't know when to quit. And I kind of enjoy this, like overproduced, overlit, overdesigned monster that this movie is.
You know what though? It watches so much better this way. Because I've been like you watching it while we were talking about this. Because I started to realize after our last discussion that I can, we're going to talk about this long enough that I can actually have the movie on while we're talking about this. Because you mentioned you did that with Superman 4. I'm like, I think I'm going to do the same thing with Batman and Robin. And it really does watch well like this.
Did you watch it on fast forward, kind of, basically?
No, I started it right when we started talking and just kind of let it go and was looking at my notes partway through. It worked out well that I'm getting to, like, I'm at the end credits right now.
Right, yeah. It's a pretty movie in a way. I mean, it's like there's so much color in this movie. This is a movie that just can't stop with the color. It's it's way too much in a way. It's it kind of hurts the eyes, but
it's not too much.
Too much. That can never be too much. Apparently.
Oh wow, Jim, what about you? Would you watch this again?
What do you think?
Because I'm going to buy it for you on Blu-ray. But I'm going to disguise it as something else. What's the movie you've always wanted to own? I'll buy it for you. I promise. I've done that to a friend a couple of times before.
Yes, we have.
We've done that before. We replace the labels with other things.
Awesome. I think we need a fan edit of this movie for Jim, which is the Mr. Freeze and Bane stand-up act.
Oh, their greatest hits.
Yeah, the greatest hits.
Yeah, actually,
we could put a laugh track. We could put a laugh track behind it.
That would be good. That would be really. This movie needs a laugh track.
Oh,
my gosh, that would improve this movie so much.
But we want to take out all of the good stuff. Because the fan edits are backwards. You almost need to put in just you're going to really torture people with this.
You take out the good stuff and you leave the bad stuff in, and then add the laugh track.
For this, I'm going to camp outside Jim's house in case he has movies shipped, and I'm always going to replace it with this. Why doesn't Sean work anymore? I don't know. He's camping outside somebody's house, giggling.
Giggling maniacally.
Waiting for that one time a year he gets a shipment from Amazon.
This movie kind of hurts my eyes, I have to say.
Wow.
It hurts my ears.
It hurts my ears.
Yeah, I'd watch this one again, too. I chose it. This was the one out of the 3 movies, in all honesty. I had the most experience with this one. So I chose this one knowing that I guess I wanted to watch it again. Although it's been a long time. That's part of the problem with, like Superman 4 and this movie. There's so many good movies in the series that it is. But see, I'm one of those when I don't know if you guys are like this. When I enjoy a series, like I loved the first 2 Burton movies. And I really liked Val Kilmer and the exploration of that's when they really started delving into Bruce's psyche in this series. But it has the same problem this one does. They should have executed the villains like right in the beginning. It might have been a half an hour movie, but what a half an hour it would have been.
It would have been a good movie.
Yeah.
It would have been a good movie. You just pretend that it's like a made-for-TV special, and
And how edgy it would be. Like they said, wow.
Yeah.
They chose to do a Batman movie where he had to do nothing except talk to people. There's like no reason for him to put on the costume. He just kind of did to drive around and like talk about family.
Kind of like an art piece. It's just,
yeah.
It's like,
very heady.
Well, like an art film.
Just to tell listeners what we're going to do, when we originally talked about this, we anticipated that we would be able to, in an episode, get to all 3 movies. We figured, I was figuring we'd do like a 4-hour episode and we would get to all the movies. Well, we're over 4 hours now on 2 movies. These basically became commentary tracks for 2 films. So Art and I had been talking about different ideas of episodes to do, and that was when I invited you. I said, Art, it seems we were talking so much about doing media together. I invited you to do this, and I thank you so much for joining us
Sure.
and doing this to yourself.
You did it to me.
Yeah, but I told you what you were in for. I said, listen, I got to warn you, we're doing these movies. And I even gave you an out. I said you could do.
I stepped in it.
I said you could do 1 movie and join us if you'd like.
Did.
And you
I decided to do all 3. What's wrong with me?
Well, hey, I came up with the idea too, so obviously we...
What's wrong with you?
Yeah, we come from the same cloth. What we're going to do is, we also talked about doing a fall preview together, because you were talking about, as you mentioned earlier in the episode, you're doing reviews, and one of the things you've been interested in lately is talking a lot about where comics on TV are heading. So we're going to do a fall preview episode taking a look at some of the comic shows that are coming onto television and what we're excited for, what we're hoping for from them. So you wanted to come back and join us for that. So we're going to do that, and we will also do Catwoman. So we'll kind of coordinate times and make that happen. So it'll make for a nice full episode that way, because there's no way we could do another 2.5 hours.
I need to go to bed, man.
I know. Art, one thing I do want to shout out, though. Where can people find your reviews, access to information about you? Let's give them some links to go to.
I have a WordPress blog, which is, well, what the heck is it? I guess it's WordPress. Wait. Dang it! See, now I have to look it up because I can never remember which way it reads.
And I can honestly, I can put your blog link right into the show notes. So there will be links in our show notes and on our website to your WordPress blog. What's on the blog?
So my blog is a WordPress blog. It's artlyon.wordpress.com. Most of my recent posts have been reviews. I did a review of Justice League United number 0. I'm going to do more reviews of that series. I did a review of Earth 2, the first collection of that series. I want to keep reading that and doing reviews of that. And there's some other reviews there. The most recent reviews, actually, my blog links over to the DC Infinite page, where I have my column is called Multiversal Overdrive.
Nice.
Yes. I made my own little logo and everything. And that's where on my blog it links to the actual articles on the DC Infinite site.
Yeah, I'm a big fan of their site, DCinfinite.com. They're doing a great job of putting out not just DC news, but there's some great commentary on there. If you're a DC fan and you're not checking out their site, it's really a terrific site. It's very fan-focused. You know, there's a lot of, as a fan, it's the extras that we're all looking for. I look at it as DVD bonus tracks. You know, a lot of this material that we're seeing on the net now is all the stuff we wanted. It's basically a replacement for the fanzine concept.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, completely. It's a good-looking site, too. I think it's well laid out, and there's a lot of websites. Because of who I am, I find a lot of websites, kind of jarring looking. But DC Infinite's site is pretty attractive, I think. And they invited me to do, reviews, and so I'm doing stuff.
Question, comic work wise, I know anytime you're in the middle of comic work or working out deals for comic work, there's things you can announce and there's things you can't announce. Is there anything that you can announce right now that we can share with our audience?
I am working on, it's kind of an ongoing project. I don't know when it will be published. First Comics is working on re-releasing some material that they published in the 80s. I get the impression that they have a lot of stuff from back then that they never got around to releasing. And I'm working on something called The Black Flame. I don't know if people remember him. I don't even know if I remember him, but he's kind of a supernatural character. And I'm working on what effectively will be like an archive edition of all the Black Flame stories, published and unpublished. And I'm recoloring those, basically. And also at some point, Sam Hill graphic novel will be released by Archie Comics. I don't know when. I worked on that like a couple years ago now, and they still haven't published it. But I hear it is coming out at some point.
With those two projects, if it fits into your schedule, let's plan to talk about those. Because it would be great to talk about Sam Hill, because you're kind of involved in the whole creative process of that, but then also comparing your experiences to, doing remaster work on classic art that you've, basically, we were talking before the episode, you mentioned that you have a history with the artist and going back and trying to keep that sensibility in mind while at the same time modernizing and remastering, because we all want to, you want to reach out to an audience. I think that would be fun to talk about. I'm sure it's a very different experience for you as you're working on that, so it'd be great to revisit that. Yeah,
it's weird. Trying to strike that balance between the older sensibilities and modern techniques. Yeah.
As always, first of all, I want to thank you for coming on the show. And the way we thank people that have such a rich history with our show is we clearly punish them.
You just keep twisting my arm.
It's like I feel like with this episode we put you in a corner. like, you know,
really, really like you, and because we like you,
look what we're gonna do to you.
If this is how you treat your friends, how do you treat your enemies?
I don't know. Like Jim, I've known for like
Podcasts with them.
Yeah, I do. Yeah, I do. I make them do this for 8 years. But no, seriously, taking the joking out of it, you have been a tremendous friend to us over the years, coming on to talk about your work, which is always wonderful, but also sharing your love for fandom and the medium in general, talking with us with media episodes and things like that. You are a valuable part of the show, and anytime we have the opportunity to have you on and talk to you, it always enhances what we do and makes for a rich episode. So it's really appropriate that on our 400th show, we would have you on, and I really want to thank you for just over the years, everything you've done for our podcast.
That's super nice. Thanks. Yeah, as I say every time, I'm glad, to be able to contribute some content, to a podcast that has provided me with, innumerable hours of entertainment. So it's kind of me giving back, sort of,
Well, we greatly appreciate it, so thank you again.
Yeah, sure thing, guys.
There they are, all alone except for that old character.
I want to take a moment real quick to thank once again Art Lyon for joining us. Art's really given us a lot of time on the show, as always, and we are going to have Art back on to do Catwoman and that fall preview episode that we were mentioning, so we're looking forward to that in the future. I want to quickly shout out our show voicemail line. It's 1-440-388-4434 or drnorge on Skype. We will be bringing back show voicemails on our next episode, and we always love having your comments, so please don't hesitate to call in. I want to remind everyone about our Facebook group. We have a wonderful Facebook group. It's shared with DCinfinite.com. That is separate from our regular Facebook page. We have a website, RagingBullets.com, and I always post show news on where the episodes are heading, and especially when I start editing the episodes, status updates on when I think approximately the show is going to be released. So RagingBullets.com is always a great source for that. That does feed our Raging Bullets Twitter and our Raging Bullets regular Facebook page, which are separate from the group. We are also available on Google+, so it's a great way to find us as well. I have a personal page on both Facebook and Google+. Jim has a regular Facebook page. Please feel free to add us on any of those if you want to chat and get caught up on what we're doing. Sponsoring this episode, once again, is DCBService.com and InStockTrades.com. Over at DCBService.com, remember to check out statues that they have there. It's wonderful that they have a discount on all the statues that are there, but you can also pre-order them so you get them at that premium price from DCBService.com. Remember, they are a digital partner. Whether you're doing Comixology or My Digital Comics, if you link those accounts to your DCB Service account, you earn 5% of those purchases towards your DCB Service order. I want to thank DCBService.com for continuing to support our show. Over at InStockTrades.com, I am a huge fan of American Vampire. Volumes 1 through 5. If you haven't been reading this is a great way to pick up a Vertigo series. 45% off each. It's an amazing series. Scott Snyder, if you're a Batman fan, you've been reading Batman right now, and you never picked up American Vampire, you need to do yourself a favor. This is terrific writing. Big fan of American Vampire, so I wanted to shout that out from InStockTrades.com. Our next episode, Jim and I are actually working on a couple episodes of content right now. We were also recently joined by a longtime friend of the show, Chad Ciccone, to talk about some of his upcoming work. That will be released. We have another special opportunity that we already recorded that's coming your way. But we're going to also have some brand new DC Comics content, such as we have an episode that we're going to be finishing up that will be released in August still, where we talk about the rest of the Green Lantern books. We're going to be talking about Sinestro, Supergirl, and we're also going to talk about Red Lanterns on that episode. So it's going to be a nice action-packed episode. And we're going to do some speeding bullets on that one, just chatting about some books that we've been reading lately that we've been digging that we want to get caught up on chatting about on that episode. So that's going to be really packed. So we got a lot of stuff coming to you in the month of August. And coming up September, we are going to be releasing the third part of this discussion where we tackle Catwoman. So we have a lot of things coming up. Be sure to check the website for release dates on those specific episodes. We have a lot of things planned, and I want to make sure to take a look at how to schedule them so we get them out to you as soon as possible. We will see you then.
Bye!
On November 13th, Sean Whalen was asked to stop constantly talking about comic books. That request came from his wife. Deep down, he knew she was right, but he also knew that someday he would find someone that would talk to him. With nowhere else to go, he appeared at the home of his childhood friend Jim Segulin. Sometime earlier, Segulin's boss had requested that he shut up about his comic books and never speak of them again. Can two grown men put out a DC Comics podcast without driving each other crazy? It's Raging Bullets, the DC Comics fan podcast. With Sean Whalen as Dr. Norge, and Jim Segulin as the Sensei of the Whatnot and the Duke of You Know. It's a spoiler podcast, so they will go in depth into the plot line, story twists, and whatnot of the comics they are reviewing. So if you haven't read the books, you may want to come back later so you may better enjoy the show.